Stories are the most powerful thing on earth. They are literally life and death. Wars are waged based on the story of who is the hero and who is the villain. You are the result of a story your parents told each other, the one-night stand, the soulmate, and friends who became so much more. Life and death. So wouldn't you like to understand them better, these stories? How Story Works, an elegant guide to the craft of storytelling by Lani Diane Rich, demystifies stories and helps you understand why you love what you love, why you hate what you hate, and why prologues are almost always a bad idea. How Story Works by Lani Diane Rich. Available on Amazon in ebook, audiobook, and paperback form. Get your copy today.
Welcome to Still Pretty, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast from Chipperish Media. I'm story expert and god of bad home perms, Lani Diane Rich.
And I'm film scholar and very needy little bloodsucker, Noelle LaCroix. And we're here today to talk about Intervention, the 18th episode of Season 5.
Intervention aired on April 24th, 2001, and was written by Jane Espenson and directed by Michael Gershman.
Spoilers abound here on Still Pretty because that makes the discussion so much more fun, especially in these end of the season episodes where the foreshadowing gets really heavy-handed. Death is Buffy's gift, y'all. I mean, come on. Vampires of the world, beware. All right, let's go on patrol. In Intervention, Buffy worries about her ability to love, so Giles suggests she go on a quest in the desert to get answers. Meanwhile, Spike goes to Warren's to pick up his order, a fresh-out-of-the-box BuffyBot. As Warren wisely rushes to get the hell out of Dodge, Spike isn't quite sure he likes the final result.
She looks a little shiny to me. You know, a touch of plasticine.
Spike? Oh, Spike.
She'll do.
At Glory's mansion, she frets that she's losing control of Ben. He's getting stronger. They have to find the key now, and she sends her minions to spy on the Slayer and find out who is new in her life, who is precious. While the real Buffy goes into the desert with Giles to get answers about her life as a Slayer, Spike and the BuffyBot play sex games. Dawn goes to stay at Xander's with Tara babysitting while Xander and Anya go on patrol. Willow attends a late-night class. And Glory's minions watch over them all.
While Spike sleeps, the BuffyBot goes out on patrol. She bumps into Xander and Anya, who are out covering the real Buffy's shift. Buffy's a little weird, but then Spike shows up and says the place is crawling with vampires trying to get the BuffyBot out of there. But it turns out the place is crawling with vampires, ones the minions sent to see who Buffy protects. Of course, the BuffyBot protects Spike. After the fight, Spike shoos Xander and Anya away, but when Xander goes back to ask Buffy a question, he sees the BuffyBot straddling Spike as they have sex in the graveyard.
Oh, Spike, you're the big bad. You're the big bad.
Xander and Anya return to their apartment and report back to Tara and Willow what they saw. Everyone decides they need to find Buffy and talk to her. At Spike's crypt, there's a noise at the door. He sends the BuffyBot below to hide, and Xander walks in. He confronts Spike about having sex with Buffy, but then a bunch of Glory's minions break in and take Spike away.
Careful with him. She will want the key intact. Key? Who's a key? I'm not the...
The BuffyBot comes out of the crypt and can't find Spike, so she starts to look for him. She goes to Xander's and finds Willow there and wants to know where Spike is. Willow tries to talk to her about Spike, but the BuffyBot is not ashamed.
I had sex with Spike.
Xander comes back to the apartment and interrupts their talk, reporting that Glory's minions came in and took Spike. The BuffyBot wants to save him and says she needs weapons, so they go back to her house to get them. Meanwhile, out in the desert...
Death is your gift.
Glory tells her minions that a vampire can't be the key because it's impure, but it sure might be able to tell her where her key is if enough torture is applied. She starts to throw Spike around the place, literally. Back at Buffy's house, Anya tells the BuffyBot to go get changed into something more fighty, and she goes upstairs. Then the real Buffy comes home, and we play a short round of Who's On First before BuffyBot returns downstairs, and Buffy is offended that they couldn't tell she's one of Warren's girlfriend bots. But then...
People, friends of mine, you're forgetting the most important thing. Glory has Spike, and she's going to harm him. Glory has Spike?
Certain that Spike will tell Glory that Dawn is the key, everyone rushes out to Glory's mansion. Inside, Spike is beat all to hell. He manages to get Glory to hit him so hard she pulls the chains out of the wall and he throws himself into the elevator shaft. In the lobby, I guess? Do mansions have lobbies? Anyway, in the lobby, the minions fight as the BuffyBot takes a fatal hit and sparks to the ground. They beat off the minions, grab Spike, and run. Back at the magic box, Willow works on the BuffyBot while they try to figure out how to find out what, if anything, Spike told Glory.
God, I feel kind of bad for the guy. Gets all whooped and his best toy gets taken away.
Xander, please don't be suggesting what I'd have to kill you for suggesting.
No, travesty, completely on board. It's just... the guy was so thrashed.
The BuffyBot busts into Spike's crib and finds him bruised and battered. She talks to him and he says that Glory beat him to find out about the key. BuffyBot rushes toward the door saying she'll tell Glory who the key is, but Spike says no. If Glory finds out, it'd kill Buffy, and that would kill him. Buffy gives him a gentle kiss, and in the middle of it, Spike realizes something. As Buffy leaves, he calls out after her, asking about his robot. Buffy says the robot was gross and obscene and not real, but...
what you did for me and Dawn, that was real. I won't forget it.
All right, so, Noelle,
Yes.
Here we are at intervention.
Here we are.
Yeah, and so I just want to know, what do you think about this episode overall?
It strikes me as yet another one of those re-railing kind of episodes. We've gotten kind of off... not off course, but we've gotten away from the Glory is looking for the key and there's, all of the big bad shenanigans, hijinks, tomfoolery, nonsense. And we talked about this a little bit last week too, but anytime you have an unusual episode, then there's this process of, all right, we got to kind of get back to our more standard run-of-the-mill Buffy the Vampire Slayer, world without end, amen kind of situation. So here we are. And also here we're not, because we're bringing in a bunch of new elements as well. It feels a little bit like there's a lot going on. And I like a lot of those bits, but it doesn't form a cohesive episode for me. Which is not a criticism so much as I kind of don't know what to do with all of it, I guess.
Yeah, you know what? I think it's a fair cop, though. There is a lot going on. We have Buffy going off into the desert, right? To kind of commune with her essential slayerness, right? And
or
that
something?
or
what?
something. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. So she's off, basically just because we need her out of the house so that the BuffyBot can come in and confuse the hell out of everybody, right? So we're setting that up, and there's a lot of chess pieces being moved around the board, so we've got a lot of things kind of happening. We are getting back to our big bad. I mean, we've had a couple of episodes, we had I Was Made to Love You, then it's The Body, then it's Forever, and now we're back to robots again, right?
Yes.
So The Body and Forever were essentially outside of the narrative of the season, of the story of the season. They took us into a different experience in a different place. They are the episodes that in another season might be considered filler episodes, but they had such incredible emotional impact and huge character impact that they are really, really super important in a way that the filler episodes, so that we can, tell a story in 22 episodes, which is ridiculously long. For a season of television.
That's another thing. Yeah. This is episode 18 of 27 bazillion.
27.
It's, oh my God. This, I love this season. I love season 5. It's so long.
It's all really long. I mean, and the thing is that this is the way television used to work. It used to be 22 episodes a season. We didn't really do a lot of these highly serialized television shows until probably, I don't know, late 80s, early 90s. That was when, VHS tapes came in. You could go back, you could record the season so that you could go back and revisit all of these stories. And once we were able to revisit all of these stories, not everything, but a lot of these TV shows started to become less anthologized, which is just week to week, we've got a new mystery for Columbo to solve, and more serialized, where we've got these longer stories that are being told all over the place. So we're looking at Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which started in 1997, I believe, right? So it starts in like the spring of 97, which is sort of right after this huge transition and when these stories start to get more serialized on television. And at that point, it was 22 episodes because 22 episodes was the most financially, like the financial sweet spot for all the studios to make enough money back on the TV shows that they were producing. So that's how it was. It was purely economic, right? So this is the whole history of television. You didn't ask for it, but you get it anyway because that's what I do.
Welcome to the History of Television podcast.
There you go. Oh, no, seriously, I would love that. So then, as we move forward into, more and more cable networks appearing, in the early aughts, to where we get some of these cable networks producing original TV series, but they don't have the kind of budget that can give you a 22 episode season. You're seeing things coming from like our cable networks like HBO and Showtime and everything, and they're giving 10 to 13 episode seasons, as our USA Network and TBS, like all of these channels were starting to give these, these cable shows, Mad Men, Breaking Bad, all of that kind of stuff, right? We're starting to see them come out with 10 to 13 episodes and discovering at that point, because that was the economic model for those smaller, networks, that 10 to 13 episodes for a season arc is pretty much the sweet spot, So we've got these 22 episode long seasons that now we are going back and watching, and they feel so freaking long because we're used to Game of Thrones and we're used to Breaking Bad and we're used to this kind of like this new season, structure. We're having television shows that were the traditional 22 episode, a year type of shows like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., right? Coming back with half seasons, and before that, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was breaking up their season storytelling into pods, right? So they'd have like 2 or 3 different stories that they were arcing throughout a season. So they were telling stories, complete stories in those little hops, Veronica Mars, by the way, season 3 was one of the first television shows to do that. Anyway, all of this history
Coming
of television
soon from Chipperish Media.
I
Deep
love
dive
this
into
stuff.
the economics
I'm
and structuring of television
interested
series.
in it. Well, yes, I'm interested because it does
because it
affect
matters
the
for
storytelling.
story.
Exactly. It affects the storytelling. So here we have, as we go back now with this mentality where we understand kind of the ideal length of these things, the 22 episode season feels that much longer. And when we get to these filler episodes where it's like, we are not doing anything here. Let's just do something, it feels, I think, even more like, so here we are now. We're at the end of season 5 of Buffy. We get to intervention and suddenly all of this stuff is coming together, right?
Yeah.
We've got Buffy going out into the desert, discovering that death is her gift, which is, going to be a really big thing. And yet not what this episode is about.
Right.
This episode is about the BuffyBot and Spike.
Oh, dear.
Yes. I am so interested to hear your opinions on all of this.
I mean, okay. I love the BuffyBot because I love any opportunity that the show gives Sarah Michelle Gellar to play Buffy, but not Buffy. So
yes.
Faith as Buffy. Like, there are moments, where I genuinely forget that it is the same actor. Like,
no, seriously.
She is so good.
She's fantastic.
She is so good. So good, to the point that when Buffy is pretending to be the BuffyBot, you notice because Buffy is not as good of an actress as Sarah Michelle Gellar.
No, but that's what Sarah Michelle Gellar is bringing to Buffy. We're in a turducken of Buffy. It's so freaking good.
It's so delightful.
I know. I love it.
And I love a robot. Like, give me the robots. I love them.
Give me all the robots.
Well, just as an opportunity to, there's a little bit of like, who's on first tomfoolery.
There's a little bit of that, yes.
But I don't know, any opportunity to bring someone in and have the Scoobies respond to them in a way that, like they think this is Buffy. They think something is seriously up with Buffy. What happened in the desert anyway? She is super spaced out. And oh my God, also apparently having sex with Spike. Like, what do we do? And of course, the audience is just like, oh boy, this is.
Oh, it's delightful. It's delightful. I mean, first of all, like, identity shenanigans are absolutely my fucking game. Like, I love all of this. And I love the things that are happening with the BuffyBot. The programming that went into the BuffyBot, I find really interesting. There's a lot of that kind of stuff. Like, how did she, I mean, I guess that Spike must have told the BuffyBot that Dawn was the key after the BuffyBot was created by Warren, because Warren wouldn't know that. So, like, what did Warren program? What did Spike tell her? It's so
especially because there seems to be, at least maybe subtly implied, the opportunity for Spike to do some on-the-fly programming, because what is it that the BuffyBot says about Angel, that he has bloody stupid hair? Like, she says
his hair grows straight up and he's bloody stupid or something like that.
Yeah.
It's kind of cute. Yeah.
But what she says is very Spike. Like, she's not Buffy in that moment. She is Spike having programmed. Like, there are a couple of things that the BuffyBot says that I'm like, that was not Warren's original.
No, I mean,
like,
Spike
Warren
has
didn't
been
input that. And the implication there, I mean, is maybe a little troubling if you think about it, but also like, what bizarre world are we like? It's a delight. I love the BuffyBot. She's
it's
ridiculous
so
and adorable.
It's so interesting. Yeah. The whole BuffyBot thing. I find fascinating the way that Spike interacts with the BuffyBot. The fact that she is a sex bot, but she's also not a sex bot. She is a love bot. Her job is to love him, right? And we see the same malfunction happen with her as happened with April and Warren, is that Warren just left April behind hoping that her batteries would die, right? And April on her own made a decision, made an active choice to go find Warren, because her programming was to love him and care for him, and she can't care for him if he's not there, right? So we have Spike, when Xander comes in, before the minions come and take Spike, Spike tells the BuffyBot, go downstairs and wait until I come and get you, right?
Right.
But that's not what happens. He gets taken and she comes out and goes looking for him, which is counter to the programming, which I find fascinating.
Well, it's counter to what he has told her to do, but her programming apparently is to be with him.
To be with him and take care of him. So she has a prime directive. Yes.
Yeah. Which is very cute. Very cute.
So,
like,
yeah.
And also very girlfriendy.
Yes.
It's not like, we haven't had sex in 2.3 hours. Like, it's time to, go again. It's like, I started to miss you. And I find it really interesting that a girlfriend bot makes Warren less creepy. I mean, not really. We talked about this with I Was Made to Love You. But the show believes that she wasn't just for sex, is what makes it less creepy that he has this robot. But it somehow makes Spike more creepy.
No.
Like, if he just wanted a Buffy sex bot, that would be very questionable.
Well,
right?
We've had that discussion. Anybody who wants to go back to that discussion can visit the Still Pretty episode for I Was Made to Love You, because we went in deep on the ethics of the sex bot.
We went in deep to sex robots.
Yes, we did. Yes,
somewhat
we did.
intended.
Pun completely intended. I have no shame. But the thing that I find really interesting, though, about the BuffyBot is that it really is a girlfriend bot. It really is a love bot. And what I found fascinating is Spike goes down on the BuffyBot discuss.
Oh, happily. What would you like me to discuss? Going down on robots? I've never done that.
Well, but that's Spike. Part of what Spike wants from this experience, right?
Yeah.
Is to please Buffy, is to do sexual things that are for Buffy, who is a robot.
Well,
I love it, but
also,
it's complex, right?
It's complex. It tells us a lot about Spike's sexuality.
Yes,
it tells us a lot about Spike's sexuality and how Spike is using this robot, because there are a number of reasons that happens, and I think they're all really great.
All right, I'm guessing we should probably have a little bit of maybe what I should have done a little bit before we had this discussion is like a maturity warning, content warning for people who are listening to this in the car with their kids. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, please. Do people, I don't know. My kids watch and listen to questionable things, so maybe I'm, I have nothing to stand on here.
But there are lots of people who would rather not. Although I think anybody listening to Still Pretty, who has been listening to Still Pretty for a while, knows not to listen to it with the kids in there. But anyway, go ahead.
Anyway, cunnilingus is pleasurable not just for the receiver but for the giver.
Yes.
So there's that. there's Spike is clearly, based on the BuffyBot's programming, is clearly using her to experience these fantasies, because he is, when she's like staking him but not staking him, he is in it. Like he is in the moment. This is some he has clearly thought this through lots of times. So it surprises me not at all that that appears. And I think it's kind of fantastic.
Well, the idea that part of the fantasy that Spike has is not just Buffy pleasing him, but that he can please her. I find really interesting. Absolutely. Okay, yes. Oral sex is pleasurable for the giver. That is absolutely true. It is also pleasurable to, be the one that gives somebody else that special moment, right? And that's great. Can the BuffyBot come? Can he bring her to orgasm? Is that part of her programming? Is that because that's part of the fun of it, right? So if you're going to have the fun,
I would hope so.
I would hope fun.
I would hope so. Just from a fantasy, I would hope that was part of the fantasy for Spike.
Well,
I don't know.
But would you expect it to be part? Look, I have known men with human souls, and again, reality is no defense for fiction. But you know what I'm saying, right? And and here he is. We keep talking about selfish love and about what it is that vampires are able to experience, and the ways in which they love, and immature love, and that it's all about them and what they need. But part of what Spike needs is to please Buffy, and I find that so interesting.
Oral sex on robots, people. It's a thing. Get into it.
Sure. You know what? Yes, whatever.
But also, it's interesting shorthand. The way Spike is with the BuffyBot across the board is interesting shorthand for the way Spike is. He literally, this is a toy that he had built for himself. He could do literally anything with it that he wants, but he's sweet to it in a weird way. He's nice to the robot.
Nicer to the robot than he was to Harmony.
No kidding.
He wants not just to be loved, but he also wants to love. That the act of loving is essential to who Spike is. And one of the first things that we saw, of William as a live person, as a human in Fool for Love, was him being the very spirit of vexation as he tries to write a poem for who? The woman he loves. There's an active part of Spike. Loving is such an active, experience for Spike, that he needs to be loving. That is a big part of who he is. And given the sense we have that vampires are innately selfish, that his love is selfish and immature, I think that everything that happens in this episode, including letting Glory nearly kill him before he would give up Dawn, because that would hurt Buffy. That Spike's love, while definitely dark, as we're going to see, the evolution of this, as we started from, way back when he first realized that he was in love with Buffy, and this became textual, although I will say, I think it's been textual since season 2, since he watched her on the TV screens, and I think it was Halloween. But I think that his sense of love and what it means and what it is and how central it is to his identity, right? I think that all of that is part of Spike. And the fact that he would be killed, tortured and killed before he would do something that would hurt Buffy, I find to be very interesting, not inconsistent with who he is, with what part of William he brought with him into this dark space, loving Drusilla was his whole thing, in season 2. And in season 3, we saw him briefly, in Lover's Walk. And again, that was about loving Drusilla, right? He comes back. He's without identity. He's got a chip in his head, right? Season 4. He's faltering around. He doesn't know what to do. He falls in love with Buffy. And that, I think, or even beginning to acknowledge falling in love with Buffy, although I don't think he realizes it till he wakes up in that cold panic this season,
Which
but
is so delightful. Every time we see it on the Previously On, I'm like,
I know, I love it so much. I love the whole thing. It's so freaking great, I love all of this. I find it so interesting, and I think that it really complicates this simple idea of what love for a vampire may be, what love for somebody who is soulless may be. And again, going back to the soul, I think that we have had anything but complete clarity on the mechanics of souls within the Buffyverse anyway. That it doesn't necessarily make you good because humans are terrible. And the lack of one doesn't necessarily make you bad, because we see demons, especially going forward over in Angel, and then later on, throughout seasons 6 and 7, where we've got Clem, who is just the most delightful demon ever, right?
Yes.
And no soul because he's a demon, but also just absolutely the sweetest thing. So the soul as the arbiter of goodness, of course, we have many, many textual, textual evidences that go against that. Spike's love is dark. We know that it's dark. We know that it's selfish. We know that there are things that he cannot understand. But there's this wonderful moment of breadcrumbing that Buffy gives him at the end when she kisses him. And she kisses him on the lips, not on the cheek, on the lips. She kisses him. And she says that, the BuffyBot is gross and obscene and not real. But what you did for me and Dawn, that was real.
Yeah.
And so there is there's the real side of love, and then the not real side of love. And I feel like more than our discussions of selfish and immature love, that there is a combination of real and not real love going on for Spike, and him allowing Glory to almost kill him was real.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Well, because he's choosing an action rather than being consumed by an emotion.
Right.
And I think that is part of what helps both distinguish that from the selfishness and also kind of makes the whole thing that much more complex. Like
Yes.
he is capable of doing the right thing, and not only because he's got the chip. I mean,
Right.
allowing himself to be tortured to save Dawn
Mm-hmm.
and save Buffy the pain of losing Dawn has
Right.
nothing to do with his chip. Like
Absolutely nothing.
that's not a chip, you know, like that's not the chip interfering.
Mm-hmm.
That is him protecting these people who are important to him.
Yeah. That's love. And that's real, you know, and the difference between what is real and what is not real. That is, I think, the essential core of what's going on with Spike, is that he is a mixture of real love and then this kind of like dark shadow of love. But love for Spike is an active verb, you know? And he expresses that in a lot of different ways, and yet also makes this like BuffyBot, you know, of Buffy, right? Because she won't give him consent, so he takes what he can get, you know, which is also like dark and shadowy and kind of gross, you know.
It's kind of twisty. It's more than a little bit twisty.
It is. I mean, and it's really, but it's so interesting because he is this mix. And it is this endless mix of real, actual love mixed with this sort of corrupted shadow love, you know, shadow sense of love, almost play of love, right? You know, where it is more affectation than reality, you know, and he shifts back and forth. I mean, we see that with him in Fool for Love, right? You know, he shifts back and forth between this dark shadow love and the real love. He goes to her house to shoot her in the head with a shotgun and then ends up sitting with her and patting her on the back and comforting her and just sitting with her in silence in her pain, not necessarily really trying to make her feel better and tell her it's all going to be okay. He doesn't do that. But what he does is he sits with her in her pain, which is like the hardest freaking thing to do, right? But he does that, and that is an act of real love. You know, shadow love is the obsession that makes me want to shoot you in the head, right? And then real love is the genuine desire that you not be alone in your darkness. Not that I'm going to make you feel better, because I can't, because everything sucks and it's terrible, but that I will not let you be alone in your darkness, you know? And then he goes and sits with her. And that is a beautiful expression of real love.
And that's the explanation that he gives to Buffy when he thinks she's the BuffyBot.
Yep.
When he says, you know, you can't ever tell Glory that Dawn is the key, because we can't lose Dawn, because it would destroy Buffy and I can't see her in that much pain.
Yes.
It's a lot. It's a lot. And of course the Spike Buffy thing just gets more complicated as we go from here, because, you know, Buffy, it's a tiny little moment, but at the end there, Buffy really has to grapple with her own feelings about what Spike did.
Yeah.
You know, she goes to him as the BuffyBot, I think fully expecting that he gave something up.
Right.
That Glory knows. Maybe Glory doesn't know everything, but Glory knows something, and they are screwed now.
Exactly.
And then what she gets is, he says, no, never would I reveal this information.
And the beating that he took, you know, to protect her and to protect Dawn. Like, this is actually a pivotal moment for Spike and Buffy. Nothing that happens for Spike and Buffy in the future would ever have happened without this moment. This is the, you know, I mean, this is the proof of love moment. Like, I talk about that sometimes in various podcasts, that one of the things that I love the most are these moments of proof of love, when a person does something purely for love of another person without the anticipation that they're going to get anything out of it, that it's ever going to benefit them. He did not tell Buffy that he took that beating to protect Dawn. He told the BuffyBot, thinking it was the BuffyBot. You know, he wasn't looking for credit. He wasn't looking for her to, and even when he says to the BuffyBot, it's not like, yeah, I knew that, you know, if I took this for Dawn and protected Dawn, that Buffy would be so grateful that maybe she would see me in a different way. That's not it. It's that would destroy Buffy. And I can't live with that.
This is the second one of those beats in a row, just episode wise, because we had him bringing flowers for Joyce and not leaving a note or a card.
Credit. Yeah.
He didn't want, he wasn't trying to get in with Buffy. He just
liked Joyce.
He just liked Joyce.
I like
He just likes
lady.
the Summers women. It's great.
Know.
It's great.
I can't stand Summers women taking it so hard on the chin. This is 3 forever. He helps Dawn and says, don't tell Buffy. I'm not doing this for Buffy. Buffy will kill me. So this is 3.
No, you're right. This is 3. Dang.
This is 3. But this is the only one that Buffy knows about. Right? This is the only one that Buffy knows about. And so all of it is, God, it's so good and it's so interesting. And what I love about this whole thing with Spike and with love and with how it all works is that there is no simple answer to it, that it is complex and layered and multifaceted, the way that actual love is. Actual love is a very complicated and difficult thing to wrestle, which is why so many of us, with our souls and everything, struggle with it, But it's so interesting and rich, and I just absolutely love it. And, I also freaking love Glory and Spike. Like,
oh my God.
Let's talk a little bit about that interaction, because damn, right?
I mean, another one of my favorite pairings on this show. 2 great evil tastes that taste great together.
Taste great together. Yes.
I mean, Glory and Spike. Spike has given Glory a little bit of a run for her money in the past, but this is, I mean, he really gets to mess with her while she's messing with him, which is just delightful.
It is, I know.
But what I love Glory's first impression of Spike. What the hell is that, and why is its hair that color? She's so offended. It's so delightful. And she also knows immediately that he's a vampire.
Yes.
We get this nice little detail that you can't even brain suck a vampire. So, in case you were going to try.
Yeah.
Like, new plan there, guys. But they're so well matched because, of course, she gives no shits.
Yeah.
He gives no shits. He is so not impressed by her, God or no God. He's, gonna hurl all the insults at her. I love her explaining to the minions that the key has to be pure and vampires are impure. And he says, damn right, I'm impure. I'm as impure as the driven yellow snow. Which is that's like a great Jane Espensonian Spike line.
Oh, yeah. Let's not forget how very Espensonian this episode is.
It really is.
So wonderful. I love it.
It really is. There are some fantastic lines that I'm like, oh, that's, Espenson for sure. But, as funny as Glory and Spike are together, it's also brutal. I mean, she just digs right into him because she knows that she can torture the information out of him. Maybe. I mean, she believes she
thinks
can.
she can. Yeah.
Yeah. And torturing Spike by giving him a drink of water and then smashing the glass against his cheek is just wonderfully awful.
Yeah.
And Spike, of course, is just, he holds his own against Glory, who is gonna take his skin off and do all manner of things
like
to him.
An apple in one strip. I mean, Jesus. Like, I know vampires are hard to kill and everything, and so death may not be, he might survive that and just grow his skin back and be fine. But the bottom line is that's gonna hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. He's obviously in all of the pain and still goes through the motions of messing with her about Bob Barker being the key. The minions are so stoked that the key is Bob Barker from The Price is Right. And Jinx, especially with his I know this one, excitement. It's delightful. And it's also very Spike because Spike loves television. Spike loves all television. So of course, when Spike is trying to pull one over on Glory, he's going to say, oh, it's that guy from TV. Of
Right.
course he chooses someone from television.
Mm-hmm.
But I love them. I love them trying to out-evil each other. She's threatening him with all this stuff, and he is calling her all the names. And
Yes.
his plan to get himself literally kicked out of her room is pretty great.
Well, yeah. And then as he's suffering, right, barely able to move from the kick that she gave him that was so strong that it yanked the chains holding him out of the ceiling. Like, that is serious. He's like, yeah, great plan. And then just waddles over to the elevator, pulls the doors open, lands on top of a moving elevator, then
hurling
lands at the
himself
bottom.
down the elevator shaft is
No, seriously. Like, it's the strength that it takes for him to do that. And then just lies there in the elevator, unable to move while the fight goes on in the lobby of the personal mansion, which is a thing, I guess. I don't know. So yeah, all of that it's so great. And seeing him stand up to her for that and like be willing to die, you know, is just, it's so good. It's so great. And it tells us so much about Spike. I mean, what we learn about characters, we learn through the choices that they make. And this was a choice that he didn't struggle with.
Yeah.
Never for a moment.
Yeah. He seems, he's oddly into it. Like, despite being, and I don't mean in a masochistic way, like he's pleased with his ability to stand up to her.
Yeah.
And his, I don't know what to call it, but he's never been that impressed with Glory, which is just funny to me. There's just something about that just tickles me, and I love it. I love the two of them together.
Well, it's interesting because she is kind of the shadow side of Buffy, you know, right? I mean, I'm so sick of strong little women who aren't me, right? You know, strong little blonde women who aren't me. That she, you know, she is like the dark side. She's got the power. She's got the feminine presentation, you know, the cute little blonde girl thing going for her. And yet she's incredibly powerful. She's incredibly strong, but she is not Buffy. So the things that he loves about Buffy are not present within Glory, within the shadow presentation of Buffy, which I really, really like. So, you know, going back to Buffy, right? One of the things I think that kind of fractures this episode into two things that feel like they don't really go together is her going to the desert to try to figure out where her love is, you know? And I find this whole thing, we have this opening scene with her where she's talking with Giles and she's saying, I'm hard, you know, I'm like, this is making me, you know, like hard and resistant. And it was before Joyce died. It was, you know, and then of course she uses Riley. I'm like, no, the reason why you didn't love Riley is because he was Riley, Buffy. Like, there's a reason, and it is not that something is broken in you.
It takes two to fuck up a tango, okay? Like, it takes two to, like, anyway.
It takes one of them being super fucking cardboard to be like, that is the reason why you don't love him is because he's Riley, you know? But anyway, so one of the things that I talk about, you know, somewhat frequently, and that we're going to be getting to, I think, even more as we move forward in the series, is the erasure of trauma for Buffy, which we don't always do. You know, we don't always erase her trauma, but we kind of do when it's something we don't really necessarily want to talk about. So we expect Buffy, I think, because of all of her, like, you know, strength and her superpowers, to like not be traumatized by the endless daily violence and murder in her life, you know? And because we code these demons as animals, and because killing animals is something that, you know, we do as a society so that we can eat them, right? And she's killing these demons coded as animals so that they don't kill other people as a protective measure, that this is her job. This is what she was born to do. This is what she was called to do. And therefore there shouldn't be any trauma associated with it. I myself feel like, yeah, there probably would be, you know, in that daily, you know, killing, that experience of always killing and of always having to keep this distinction on, you know, between who am I completely justified in killing and who am I not? And asking that question, you know, when she thought she had killed Ted, now, of course, Ted was also a robot. But when she thought that Ted was human and she had killed him, That was hugely traumatizing for Buffy. When Alan got killed by Faith in season 3, that was hugely traumatizing for Buffy because these were human deaths and human deaths matter, whereas these animal deaths don't. For the demons that are coded as animals and monsters, some of them are coded also as human. So like every vampire that she kills that has a personality, like that's a thing. When she had to kill Angel, vampire, she's a vampire slayer. He was still a vampire even though he had a soul, but that was like hugely, massively traumatizing for her. And we give her like an episode to recover from that, right? She's killed. She's killed in Prophecy Girl. She comes back in When She Was Bad and like Dead Man's Party. She comes back in When She Was Bad, and then by the end of that, we're okay. Right. She dusts the master's bones and then everything's done and we're fine. And she's moving on. Right. Her trauma has been resolved. We at least acknowledge it. Right.
Right.
At the end of season 2 with Becoming Part 1 and Part 2, she kills Angel, hugely traumatizing, runs away from, home, dyes her hair, lives in Los Angeles, goes through this whole thing, comes back, right? And we have an extra episode in Dead Man's Party where we address in Anne and Dead Man's Party the trauma that she went through, and then we cover it, we take care of it, it's done, and we move forward, into season 3. But we do tend to erase Buffy's trauma around other things, especially as it relates to sexual assault, assaulted by Xander and the pack, by the loser on the swim team and Go Fish. And later, of course, we're going to get an actual, like, real detailed sexual assault with Spike and Seeing Red at the end of season 6. We will get to that when we get to that. So that doesn't mean that we don't see any traumatic response from Buffy, but we don't spend near enough time on it. Like, Buffy is expected to recover in one episode from anything that happens to her, and then we're just moving on. So when we get to this spot where she is talking about this numbness, this hardness, it's hard to say the word love, right? That is actually a trauma response. That is something that happens to people when they're, processing a lot of trauma. Now, she's also got the trauma from her mother's death, right? So we are actually allowing that. But she was saying this is from before. She's been feeling this for a long time. So it feels to me like we are starting to like really acknowledge the fact that what Buffy does on a day-to-day basis is hugely traumatizing. And what she's been through, throughout all the years of these experiences on top of experiences on top of experiences that would be really, really difficult, are actually taking a psychological toll on her. And what I find interesting is Tony Soprano gets a fucking therapist, but Buffy doesn't, and that was concurrent with this. Like, The Sopranos, I think, started 2001, 2000 maybe. And that, so it's on this timeline, and the only time we even really address Buffy's mental health is in Normal Again, in which mental illness is presented in much the way we see it presented in this season, and that is regrettably. So we're going to definitely talk about that when we get there in season 6. But I do I talk about the erasure of Buffy's trauma, and I don't think that we erase all of it, but we erase a lot of it, and we don't allow a lot of it. But here we have this moment, where we're allowing her to kind of talk about the things that are happening with her. And of course, she has to go, rather than go to a psychologist or a therapist, which if the Watchers Council was doing its job, would have a host of therapists trained in Slayers to provide exactly this kind of attention. But yeah, Watchers Council, pretty terrible. Yeah. But so now we finally got this sort of addressing, right, of that trauma. We're having her go out into the desert and talk to the first Slayer, whose job is once again to do emotional labor for a white woman.
Well, and all right. What?
All right. Mm-hmm.
What? I don't know. Are they trying to retcon the vision of the first Slayer? Because this is not actually the first Slayer. This is a vision of a guide this is another thing we do on this show, is we're like, we just kind of want to address it, but not really. So this is not like the spirit of the first Slayer. This is Buffy's guide, or a guide, coming to her in the form of the First Slayer.
Right.
Because we need to retcon the First Slayer and make her not the problematic depiction of like primitive warrior womanhood that we had in Restless. Like what?
But we're still doing that.
But
we have
we're
her
doing it in
animalistically like crawling around the fire. We've got all the war paint on her face.
But she's like, she's like the poetic wisdom.
Yeah,
Yoda.
she's the magical other,
not,
right?
It's still it's so bizarre. And yeah, I get the eeriness of, oh, I know this place and I know who you are and all of that. Like, but I'm genuinely confused. Like I'm genuinely confused about this and what we're trying to do.
And I think it would have been so much more interesting. Like one of the things that they do on Angel a lot is that they have these demons who are extremely up on pop culture, who live within the current moment, who talk like humans. You know, they're just demons, but there's this fun little contrast. Like over on Angel, we had a character of Sajan, who spoke very colloquially, you know, had like a modern, you know, sense of humor. We had Skip, who was also a demon, who spoke that way, who interacted in a way that was very much just like the humans, you know. But these are both white male, if not like textually like coded white male and played by white male actors, in which we kind of allow that, you know. But here we have the First Slayer, you know, whose own trauma goes unacknowledged, you know, and who exists in this space simply to come back and guide Buffy from this very like primitive representation. And I'm like, how much fun would it have been if like in the middle of the desert it just showed up as like a, you know, they just get some coffee and sit and talk, you know,
just a coffee shop,
just a coffee shop in the middle of something more modern, something that has that lovely sense of contrast and irony that we so love in the Buffyverse. But yet when we deal with the First Slayer, it is this really, like, I think problematic representation that honestly is super uncomfortable.
There's literal separation between them too. Like whether or not this vision of the First Slayer has anything to do with the actual First Slayer. Again, right. I'm totally not clear on I'm not clear on what mythology we're trying to weave here. Like, first of all, the idea that like there's a sacred location in the desert that just happens to be like a quick drive from Sunnydale.
20
no
minutes.
Big deal. Like
20 minutes into the mountains. Yes,
I'm like,
exactly.
Okay, all right. All right. But
yeah.
What? But there's such a literal separation between them. They have put up literal barriers in the form of the fire, the darkness, the First Slayer's hair and makeup. There's like so many layers of separation, and that's supposed to be like wise and mysterious as opposed to dehumanizing, which I think is, I don't know, like it comes down on the side of dehumanizing. It's like magical dehumanizing, but
yes, it's all of that. And we've seen it a lot in a lot of our stories that we see. You know, we've got these characters who exist to be magical and to inspire our white characters, right? Without any acknowledgement of who they are and what they've been through and what the First Slayer had been through. Now, we don't know the entire history yet. We won't know that until season 7, but it's fucking awful. Well, and no matter what, you can guess that it's going to be super traumatizing. the idea that the source of her power comes from being raped by demon essence, you know, is even darker than the darkness that we already see. And we already know that here we have a young woman whose job was to go out and kill things until they killed her. That is all there is for that existence. You know, so, but at that same time, now that, you know, we've acknowledged how like really troubling a lot of this imagery is and the way it's presented, the message itself, the death is your gift, right?
It's really on the nose.
It's really on the nose. It's incredibly powerful. The idea that Buffy, it's not that Buffy can't love, it's that she loves so intensely that it's too hard, and she has to shut it down. I think that's interesting, that her love brings her to her gift and death is her gift. And then Buffy's response, which I've got right here, so I'm going to play real quick.
Death is your gift.
Death
Is your gift.
Okay, no. Death is not a gift. My mother just died, I know this. If I have to kill demons because it makes the world a better place, then I kill demons. But it is not a gift to anybody.
Your question has been answered.
Right? I mean, we come back
God.
with that, and she has to deal. She is knee deep in death every single frickin' day. And the idea that this is how she feels about death. It is not a gift. She is angry about it, right? That is a daily conflict for her. That is something that she has to combat daily. Not to mention the fact that it is super complicated by the fact that you're hungry and horny afterwards. That afterwards she kind of craves a low-fat yogurt, right?
Yeah.
That there are parts of it that she enjoys when you're really good at a terrible thing, right? Being good at something feels good. Competence feels good. To know that you're really good at a terrible thing, that is such a crunchy psychological place that every day she's traumatized and also somewhat gratified by what she does. Like, oh my God, I love that. We don't do a whole lot with it, but man, I love it.
Yeah, we don't do a whole lot with Buffy's inner life in general, partly because, it's television and that's harder to do, and that's not quite the genre that we're in. But it does feel like these little snippets of Buffy's mental landscape kind of pop up as we need them. And that change of tone on death and what she has just experienced with her mother. We're not really clear on how long this is after Joyce's death, are we? It's not. It's
fairly
not long.
Soon, I would guess, within a week or two, maybe.
Yeah.
It's fairly recent. Giles is still there cooking for them and, helping them with the dishes and, being deeply involved, so there's that. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's that shift is incredible. And you're right, we don't do a lot of exploration into what it means to hold all of these things at once.
Right. Like the complication of that, here we are exploring very deeply the complication of Spike's love, right? But the complication of Buffy's trauma, of Buffy's competence, of the joy that you get from being good at something. What happens when you're really good at a terrible fucking thing, right?
Yeah.
The exploration of that just isn't there. It's presented. Like, here it is. It's theirs for the taking, but we don't really do anything with it. We just expect Buffy to get up, throw a quip around, and stab another vampire in the heart with a stake, and that's just what she does. We just expect her to keep moving on in an almost robotic way, right?
Yeah.
She was made to do this. So the reflection of the BuffyBot on our, approach and expectation of the actual Buffy, there's something there. I don't think it was deliberately put there, but there's something there.
That the robot shows up, that the robot Buffy shows up in the same episode where actual Buffy is like, I am shut down and not human. I'm afraid that my job is making me inhuman.
And the expectations, she was designed to do this thing, and she needs to do that thing without complaint, without any expectation of what it does to her, any concern for what it does to her. That the Watchers do not have a trained staff of psychologists on hand to help the Slayers says so much about this expectation. Not to mention the fact that Slayers are essentially tissues that we run through.
Yeah,
and
they're
deliberately
disposable.
kill at the age of 18 before they can start fighting back and thinking for themselves, right? Slayers are women who are essentially treated as disposable.
Yup.
Like
the
a
Watchers
robot.
Council. Everyone. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that different. The expectations of the BuffyBot to do as she is programmed and then be discarded when she sparks and, her wires get frayed, is the expectation that we have of Buffy. And I think that that's an interesting kind of reflection in this episode. So I don't know. I mean, like I enjoy what they're doing here, but at the same time, I'm like, I love the way, me, where I went on for 30 minutes about how incredibly wonderful Spike's complicated love shit is, right? He's going down on a robot. What does that mean? Right. And here we have something equally as interesting and complicated in our eponymous star of the show. And we're not spending anywhere near as much time exploring that experience for her as we are exploring Spike's love.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah.
Huh.
Right?
Interesting. Sexism, everybody. That's a fun thing.
See how it works for you. So another thing I think that is really interesting here is the BuffyBot herself. Not necessarily the BuffyBot, but like the reaction and response to the BuffyBot. Everyone knew instantly that April was a robot. Right? There was no question. Yes, everybody knew, right? Mm-hmm. Tara especially, right? Tara's responses in this, we keep Tara separate from the BuffyBot because Tara also knew when Faith was Buffy, having never met Buffy before.
Right.
Tara knew. Tara is, of course, the one who sees, right? So we deliberately don't have her interact with the BuffyBot until everybody knows that it's a BuffyBot because that would break the world, right? But meanwhile, we have Tara, every now and again we have her deliver a line that is not a Tara line, like when they're all talking about, when a parent dies, sometimes you do crazy things. I did some crazy things when my mother dies. And then Xander says, oh, she's sleeping with Spike. And then Willow says, yes, we should understand, blah, blah, blah. And Tara says, oh no, she's nuts. Right.
Yeah.
It's just not a Tara response. No. As we see later in season 6, when Buffy goes to Tara and says, I've been sleeping with Spike, and Tara's empathy and compassion is fully present in that moment. So this is just, this is exactly what a character break is. It is a rubber band moment where a character does something out of character for the purpose of a joke or a plot point, and then immediately snaps back into being regular Tara. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So we break Tara for a moment.
I mean, we could have done that same line if you wanted the, oh no, she's nuts response. Mm-hmm. You could have Willow say, oh, she's, Tara could start with, she's been through a lot. Mm-hmm. And you could have a little couple moment where Willow looks at Tara and maybe reveals when Tara's mom died, she blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. And then you give that line you give the, oh no, she's nuts line to Willow. Mm-hmm. Which is still, it's still not a great line, but
I think it's more believable coming from Willow. Than from Tara, who this is not how Tara conducts herself, with people. Yeah. So I found that a little bit, just, mildly interesting, but no one knows that Buffy isn't Buffy. After Buffy knows that Giles isn't Giles in A New Man, or Giles isn't the demon in A New Man, Buffy always knows who's who, right? But nobody knows when it's not Buffy. Nobody knew when it wasn't Buffy as Faith, except for Tara, and so that's a hard thing for her.
It's one of my favorite moments, though, is Buffy calling everyone on, you couldn't tell me apart from a robot. Like, she's so mad. Robot. It's great.
Yes, exactly. No, I love that, too, where everybody's staring at the two Buffys, and they're like, we don't even know. And she goes, it's a robot. It's one of Warren's robots. Like, she knows
what's really kind of cute, kind of cute in the same, like, ooh, I know this one that we get from Jinx, is Xander going, oh, I know this. They're both Buffy. Because, of course, he was split into both Xanders.
Yes.
And I I love his little moment of, oh, wait a minute. Like, I'm useful for half a second.
I've been this before. I've seen this before. No, let's go. Yeah. He's actually got some experience. You know, he's clocked a lot of field time. He's got some experience with this shit. So I find it so funny. You know, and then of course Buffy knows immediately what this is, you know, that Spike had Warren build a sex bot. But it's also, but what I also find interesting about the BuffyBot is that isn't part of what Spike likes about Buffy that Buffy will take none of his shit and despises him. And yet here we have this girlfriend bot who's just like, oh, but Spike, I love you, and darn your sinister attraction, you know. I find that really funny that she's not a sex bot. She is the girlfriend experience, right?
It's not fully, it's not totally fully explored. I think even Spike doesn't know the extent to his attraction to Buffy, and that some of it is that she doesn't give him the time of day. She will call him on his bullshit all the time, you know, which I just find really, really interesting. This episode also starts us with Dawn's stealing, which is my least favorite of all of this, like, little side story things that we do throughout the run of Buffy. Dawn's stealing and shoplifting, which will carry on well into season 6. I don't care. It's terrible. She just swipes a pair of earrings and we're like, okay, this is a big Dawn character moment, I guess. Yeah, we're starting something. Here we go.
Because that's what troubled teenage girls do. They steal earrings and lipsticks and bras. That's what they do. So, whatever. We also get Anya. Anya gets to dust in this episode. Yes. She dusts a vampire, and it was so fun. I also love Anya's interaction with the BuffyBot, where Buffy says, "How is your money?" And then he goes, "Fine, thank you for asking." And she is so delighted.
Yes. That is... Oh, it's so good. Anya's so happy that someone finally gets her.
Yes. And it takes a robot, right, to get
lovely.
Anya.
I mean, yeah, it's lovely. It's
strangely
lovely.
Literal and newly human. Yes.
Yep. Oh my God. Yeah, there's a lot of, like, I don't know. There are a lot of little bits and pieces in this episode that don't really go with anything. I mean, I talked already about what are the odds of the sacred place in the desert being right there in Sunnydale?
Yes.
You know, and we've talked a lot about Spike's ability or inability to love. And there's a nice little editing nod to that when early in the episode when Buffy's on the couch with Dawn and telling her that she loves her, and Dawn is like, okay, getting weird, and Buffy says, weird love's better than no love. And then we cut to Spike and the BuffyBot, which is an interesting little connection there, you know?
Yes.
I don't
weird
know.
Love, right?
Weird love's better than no love. It's better than no love. Weird love's better than no love. And we get more of a look at Xander's living room than we have, I think, ever since he moved in. And there's this amazing tool storage display board on Xander's living room wall that is lit like it's a painting.
Yes.
And I kind of love it.
No, it is. I mean, this is Xander's thing. He's a fixer guy, right?
Yeah.
He fixes all the windows that get busted up, which I really love. It's that little nod toward who is fixing all these windows, you know?
Right? It's Xander.
It's Xander.
Is fixing
and
the
Xander
windows.
building the shelves in the magic box and I love the competence that we give Xander some competence. We were struggling with that a lot, you know, throughout high school and even in season 4. It took him a while to kind of find his thing, you know? But after the replacement, we give him his competence, and I really enjoy that. You know, and he's the one who picks up on the weirdness that is Buffy. You know, when they're in the cemetery, like, she didn't ask about Dawn. You know, why didn't she ask about Dawn?
Yeah.
Like, he notices that. And so these are all the things, like, this is the Xander that I love. This is the Xander that, you know, as much as we've struggled with Xander throughout the run of the series, we're getting to the Xander that I love. And I love that little bit of competence from him, because this is always really, really fun. All right. So, Noelle, what are you wearing?
Oh my God. Like 1,000 coats in the desert. I am physically uncomfortable looking at Giles and Buffy in the desert in all those layers. Like, I know the desert gets cold at night, but no, like, stop with the coats. It's so, like, it's hard to watch, which is saying something because Giles does the hokey pokey.
I love that.
And
that's
I
what
hop
it's all
in and
about.
out of the circle and shake my gourd. Like, come on. And
then Buffy's all, I know this.
I know this. And you turn yourself about. It is the dadliest ritual.
Yes, I know. I love it so much.
He's in full-on dad mode. But, oh my God, all the sweaters and the coats and no. It's probably deeply significant of some sort of a, journey. Like, if you're going to follow a cougar through the desert, like, I just, no.
Yeah.
No.
I don't know.
But no, I can't. I mean, shout out to the cougar, though. The cougar did a great job. And it's a little bit of a bummer that we can see the cougar's trainer in a couple of shots, but whatever. I don't usually call those things out.
Right.
I don't usually call out the goofs and bloopers and whatnot, but it takes me out of the moment when it's like, oh, that's a coat and those are feet.
And those are feet and that is a trainer. Yeah, I mean, it's part of the problem of the Buffy HD remaster that originally this aired in 4:3 aspect ratio, which cut off the sides, and then now we've got it in an HD I think it's 1080 perspective. So we've got a 16:9 perspective. So we're seeing the edges now that we didn't see before, and nobody bothered to paint them out.
Yeah.
Nobody bothered to take the boom mic out. Nobody bothered to, yes, exactly. The stunt people that we see often in some of these, it happens, and it's tragic.
But anyway, clothing.
Yes.
Clothing in the desert, which you don't need if you're a cougar. The BuffyBot's outfit is fascinating to me. It doesn't quite go together. Or maybe it did in the early aughts. I don't know. But that flowy but also pleated mid-length skirt and the 2 shades of pink and the black jacket with the sparkly piping, or is it the zipper?
No, that's definitely bedazzled. It is bedazzled at the zipper. Yeah.
Off. It seems a little bit off, which I think is the point.
Yes.
I think that they really nailed it with her whole physical appearance is very like Buffy, but not Buffy.
It's just
because
slightly
it doesn't
off.
look. Yeah, it doesn't look like something Buffy would wear.
It's Vampire Slayer Barbie is what it is.
Oh my God. It absolutely is. It is. Yes. It is the Buffy Dreamhouse version of Buffy.
But I love that she can slay a vamp. I love that she goes out on patrol. I love that she can kill these vampires. I mean, that's awesome. Like, why not have a bot that can help you patrol and, and kill the vampires without getting in? Yeah, I love it.
And once again, brings us into the question of her programming and what?
Yeah.
Like, what all is she able to do?
Well, we saw that April was incredibly strong. I'm tired of super strong little women who aren't me, right? I love that line. But yeah, like I think that there's an absolute use for a BuffyBot. Like when Willow's working on the BuffyBot and finds the wires and is like, "Oh, this is so interesting." I'm like, yeah. I mean, if you've got a BuffyBot that can go out and kill vampires and not get killed, like why not? Why not have a mechanical slayer? I mean, Jesus, right?
I mean, we should have come up with this a long time ago.
It's
Watchers
not
Council.
The worst idea. Yeah, somebody should have put Warren Mears to actual good use.
Except that we really just want to subjugate women, so...
I know. If they have robots, then subjugating the women doesn't get to be as much fun. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yep.
Takes all the fun out of the patriarchy. All right, so Noelle, what's your favorite part?
I'm sorry. I love you saying taking all the fun out of the patriarchy. Oh my God. God, you guys.
You ruined everything.
The patriarchy's not fun anymore.
I know.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh, my favorite part. My favorite part is, I think it's Anya's delight when the BuffyBot asks, "How's your money?" And she says, "Fine, thank you for asking." Like, it's such a goofy little moment, but she's so genuinely thrilled. And I just like seeing Anya happy, I think is the answer.
It's really nice. It's nice to see Anya connected and not dismissed and put down by everybody.
Yeah.
It's nice to see her appreciated. And the fact is that her money is important to her, and we have established that. So somebody saying, "Hey, Anya, how is your money?" is just a nice and friendly thing to do.
Yeah.
Why can't they just be friendly to sweet Anya?
Just a little connection for Anya. That's really all Anya wants.
Exactly. Just ask her about her money every now and again. I think it's really sweet.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, Lani, what's your favorite part?
Mine is, of course, the end. When Buffy pretends to be the BuffyBot and Spike tells her and she kisses him and says, "This is real." She tells him what is real, and I love that moment between them. I love that it acknowledges that Spike is not the only one having feelings here,
Yup.
that Buffy is feeling something for Spike at that moment. And I love it. I think it's wonderful. I think it's complex and interesting. And I love that she gives him that breadcrumb to start. This is real. What you did for me and Dawn, that was real. I love it.
If you enjoyed this conversation and would like to join in, connect with the show on Twitter. Follow @Chipperish and use the hashtag #StillPretty.
This episode of Still Pretty was brought to you by the Chipperish Media producers who support us on Patreon at the Power Producer level. These people are the reason why Still Pretty is coming to you free and ad-free right now, so thank you to our July producers. Abigail, Alice, Erica, Rose, Jonathan, Kristen, Sarah, and Shelley. And this week's special message for our Power Producers: darn your sinister attraction.
To find out how you too can support Chipperish Media, visit patreon.com/Chipperish. Other ways to show your support: write a great review on Apple Podcasts, tell your friends about the show, or let your love lead you to your gift. Which probably isn't death. Don't worry about that.
We will be back next time with Tough Love, the 19th episode of season 5. Until then, say, look at you. You look just like me. We're very pretty.